Welcome everybody to this episode of Keeping It True by You Pelicans. Of course, wish to be coming with better news, but we do have to address the very serious allegations which have been placed against Zion Williamson on May 30th and have since continued now at the time of this recording on May 31st. Here on Keeping It True by You Pelicans, we try and present a more journalistic but also practical viewpoint of things like this. We try to present this in a way that is going to make it very straightforward, very realistic, not maybe cut so much on the legalese of these things, but also with respect to both parties, as they are going to be undergoing some very serious legal matters here in the next few months. Today, of course, the purpose of this episode, we're going to focus on three major things. We're focusing on the lawsuit itself that was filed on May 30th by the unanimous Jane Doe in the state of California. We will then review what that entails, what has come of it since then, particularly with TMZ interviews that have released on May 31st. We will then proceed into the counter argument by Zion Williamson's attorney. And then finally, we will briefly attempt to round this back down to the impacts that could come on the basketball perspective, giving you context on previous suspensions handed down by the NBA for situations that frankly were not even of this magnitude. And if this were to progress into a criminal situation, I think we're having a much larger discussion on the future of, is this a situation where Zion Williamson is granted back the ability to play in the NBA? But today, these are all allegations that are very serious. We will take them at that level of seriousness, of course, with respect to both parties, and attempt to cut through some of that legalese and just monotony. Of course, I do want to welcome you all to this episode, and let's begin on that note. So we're going to start off with what this lawsuit is particularly pertaining to, which is allegations that during a former girlfriend's relationship with Zion Williamson that took place over multiple states, beginning when Zion was still at Duke in 2018, and according to the lawsuit, continued until the year of 2023, primarily with the majority of noted instances occurring during the 2020 timeframe, all the way through the latter portions of that year, and then continuing until 2023. Some of those things include some very graphic nature allegations, which, for the sake of community guidelines and trying to ensure that there is the ability to discuss this further in the future, I will simply put these in simplified terms, but you can certainly go and access these documents. They are, of course, available, and most major news outlets will link you to those particular documents. We're going to start with the fact that you're looking at things along the nature of choking, of forcible non-consensual acts. You are looking at many instances, some even referring to the possibility of kidnapping in some cases. So it's primarily all around the concept of domestic violence. And again, these particularly being stated with some of the major instances taking place on September 23rd, 2020, which involved being picked up from a hotel and taken to Williamson's home. There were also another event that was claimed to have taken place on October 10th of 2020, and that one was a bit more forceful than the one on September 23rd. Of course, that was during the bubble timeline, and you can look back at those dates in relation to where hypothetically the team/player would have been, and sort of see how that would fit in. But the document did go on to later claim that these events not only took place particularly also in California, Louisiana, and Texas, as they claim the relation ended between the two, the relationship, which the lawsuit claims ended in 2023. Now, it is important to note that this is a, at this time, unknown Jane Doe looking to protect with anonymity in that state of California lawsuit. We will briefly touch on in a moment more known people who have alleged things against Zion Williamson, and we saw that today on the 31st. But to finish up with the lawsuit, this is very serious in nature, primarily due to the fact that this is at this time, and I do want to make this very clear, this is a civil case. This is not at this moment a criminal case. Now, we see the timeline which is discussed for these events, which is stating primarily in the nature of 2020, 2018 at the earliest. Many states have criminal statute of limitations, which are going to be what limits some of these from having the potential to be elevated to a criminal case. However, those statements and those documents that are provided during the discovery period of this lawsuit, remember this is a $50 million civil lawsuit. This is not at this time a criminal lawsuit, but that is where you will see some of the potential of if this will be able to be a criminal case or if this will remain a civil case. There are multiple purposes, multiple intentions that can be derived from filing a civil case of this magnitude and of this nature. We have seen this done before. If it is the case that has happened in the NFL against someone like a Deshaun Watson, or many others that have had similar civil cases brought against them. Important note there, civil cases. And again, allegations, that being that there is a claim that this happened. It is not an accusation, which would imply legal guilt, legal fault. So let's remember these are allegations of the alleged actions that took place. We want to make sure we are respectful of the legal process so that way it can happen as effortlessly for the justice to be awarded. Now, in the previous offseason, we heard of the entertainer, influencer, actress Mariah Mills bringing claims that Zion and her had an extended relationship during this time. Now, it is important to note that we have learned today, due to interviews provided via TMZ Sports, that Mariah Mills is not the Jane Doe that is being the initial filer for the May 30th lawsuit, but Mariah Mills has now contacted lawyer Tony Busby and is in the process of finding if there is a place for her to put together a lawsuit against Zion Williamson. And this is, I think, a larger set of circumstances that we have to understand regarding this particular individual. This is not the first time that there are signs that there may be instability when it comes to domestic and particularly domestic relations between himself and multiple people who have claimed to have been wronged. We did learn last month, of course, that a woman that was romantically linked to Zion was arrested for the accusation of stalking him. So this is now at least 3 separate individuals, to our understanding, who have had some type of public or legal action regarding Zion's domestic partnership, accompaniment, any things of those natures. So that is quite the accusation, and it seems like there are multiple accusations now forming. Of course, if there are another major set or if one of these do become criminal, we will address that when those are released. But in the spirit of providing both sides to give the most transparent view, let's talk about what Zion's attorney put out in a statement on May 30th. I will read this in its entirety, as it will be succinct enough, I believe, for all of us to be able to digest. So again, this is reading the public release that was made by Zion Williamson's legal team. We take these allegations with the utmost seriousness, and we unequivocally deny them. The allegations contained in the complaint categorically false and reckless. This is the plaintiff's third set of attorneys. This appears to be an attempt to exploit a professional athlete driven by a financial motive rather than a legitimate grievance. Mr. Williamson and the plaintiff never dated, but did maintain a consensual casual relationship that began more than 6 years ago when he was 18 years old. The relationship ended years ago. At no point during or immediately after that relationship did the plaintiff raise any concerns. Only after the friendship ended did she begin demanding millions of dollars. Mr. Williamson reported the plaintiff's extortion attempts to law enforcement. We understand that an arrest warrant was issued in connection with that report, and we are prepared to provide the court with documentation that supports these facts. Mr. Williamson also intends to file counterclaims and seek significant damages for this defamatory lawsuit. While these allegations are false, we recognize the seriousness of these claims and welcome the opportunity to prove the truth in court. We are confident that the legal process will expose the truth and fully vindicate Mr. Williamson. That was, again, a statement released by Zion Williamson's legal team. So given that, you do have instances where there are people who have, again, based on the arrests that took place, there are people who are very motivated in one way or another regarding Zion Williamson. We see during the Jane Doe lawsuit that there are people who are very upset with Zion Williamson. So clearly not a lot of stability there. Again, with a nature of a $50 million lawsuit for the type of claims of damages and emotional claims, again, these are very serious, but those are also very large numbers, very outside of day-to-day numbers for these types of claims in claims court. So we will see if it is proportional. We will see if it is found during that discovery process, which will be the immediate following step after the initial response by Williamson lawyers to the courts. Will be that discovery period, and then you will go on to see the further deliberations that will take place regarding this lawsuit. Now that the discussion on the actual lawsuit is completed, I do want to briefly tie this back into New Orleans Pelicans basketball. While I realize that is not going to be the priority regarding the nature of these lawsuits and the potential severity, it would be without saying that this is a Pelicans podcast. This is a Pelicans discussion, and we are trying to view this from the perspective of the New Orleans Pelicans while giving the respect and seriousness that is required for these types of lawsuits. So let's talk about, in a quick transition here, I'm not even going to promote anything today. We are trying to keep this very much serious and on topic. The last major NBA suspensions for these types, and I stress that loosely, these types of accusations, because in all fairness, I don't believe the NBA has ever had in the modern era a level of suspension or a level of banishment that could come from what these allegations claim. We have to remember it is not only the NBA, but it is the NBA Players Association who work collectively to form these suspensions, and it is also the team that has the right to place suspensions, which we did see last year. Zion was suspended by the team for inappropriate timing, if you will, regarding team activities. Obviously a much less serious note than these allegations, but let's talk about the NBA and what they handed out. If you recall, in 2020 Boston Celtics, at the time coach Ime Udoka, was fined and suspended for 59 games when it came to a claim that he was having an improper intimate relationship with a female Celtic staff member. While the relationship was originally believed to be consensual, the woman later accused him of making unwanted comments towards her, and Udoka at that time chose to resign from his position as a result of those claims and accusations. Now, that was something that was more of a harassment, was more of a misconduct, was more of a workplace discrepancy. Again, that was something that was more internal to the building and resulted in a 59-game suspension, which was originally the entire 22-23 season. Obviously, Ime Udoka has now resumed coaching activities in the NBA. That was in the 2022 season. The next closest level of suspension would be Miles Bridges for the Hornets, who was pleading no contest to felony domestic violence charges against the mother of his children. That occurred in June 2022 when he was a free agent. And basically he did not sign a contract for the 22-23 season, resulting in a default 82-game suspension. And then the NBA deemed that was recognizing 20 games of a suspension. So 30 to 20 games, Miles Bridges. Ime Udoka, 60 games. I think what you are looking at is that if this is proven in court, either on the civil side or on the criminal side, the closest thing we truly have, I believe, would be something along the lines of the Deshaun Watson case, which ended up, obviously being, I believe it was 11 out of 17 games, something in that nature. A much less serious, may I repeat, much less serious accusations. We're talking about, very much more violent levels of domestic violence. Again, these are civil allegations, but it goes without saying that if these are elevated to criminal, I think it would not be outside of the realm of the NBA to consider penalties that involve multi-year and or banishment if these are truly proven to be criminal offenses. If it remains civil, it will be determined what the civil cases end up regarding to, but I think it would be safe to say if these civil cases are at all validated, it's still going to be somewhere north of the 30 games that we saw formerly for Miles Bridges, although he did end up not playing for an entire season. So you could very well see the Pelicans without Zion if these suspensions were to be brought prior to the 25-26 season. If it goes deeper into that, it would be an interesting play to see, do the Pelicans choose to cut the player? Do the Pelicans choose to go about any other forms of what might be insurance? But usually those things do not cover these types of suspensions allegations. And the only other situation where we have seen significant jail time for a high-profile athlete in the United States was that of the Michael Vick dogfighting case that immediately comes to mind. Of course, there were some other ones. Adam Pac-Man Jones was a long suspension. Just thinking about what professional sports tends to do in these situations, I don't think it's irrational to say you could be looking at Zion Williamson on the bench if these claims are validated, if these allegations prove to be true. Regardless, I know that Gail Benson has historically, particularly with the leadership of Mickey Loomis following, 2005, so forth and so on, not hesitated to create a more ideal locker room environment. So time will tell. We will continue to monitor what happens in these cases. Of course, do continue to come back for more information, not only on this, but on traditional Pelicans news. We do appreciate you all for watching today. Like I said, if we see more significant developments in the coming days with potential more lawsuits that could be coming, we will keep you updated. This was, again, Keeping It True by You Pelicans. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you in the next one. This has been a True by You Media production. This show is for entertainment purposes only and does not render legal or financial advice. Remember to bet responsibly. Distribution of this podcast is prohibited without the express written consent of True by You Media or its subsidiaries. Thanks for being true by us. We can't wait until next time we keep it true by you.